lovelies, I'm Lexee.
And I am Misty, and this is the Flirting with Travel podcast. In today's episode, we are going to go over Lexee's Traveling While Other. It will be talking about being Black, being American, being plus size, and being a woman. So this episode is going to be on Traveling While Other.
Mm-hmm.
Other being every other category that you occupy.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those are there?
I mean, probably a lot, but I was just going to focus on Black, female, plus size.
What would be one that people might not see? See, I stunned her. I got her. Okay, so traveling while Black.
Mm-hmm.
What countries do you think are the hardest to travel while Black?
I don't know if I could pinpoint it. The ones that you notice it the most are typically like Japan or very Asian countries, because you don't necessarily see a lot of Black people there. They tend to be really homogenous societies, so for some people, I very well could have been the first Black person they saw not on TV.
That's bullshit. I really feel that traveling while Black is just a thing. I feel like they would just want to act that way. You don't think that? Like, who comes up to somebody and just touches their hair?
A lot of people. That happens to me a lot. So Japan, that was super common. I would be out drinking, walking through a club, and then get yanked back because someone just full on just all in my hair like this. And granted, at the time I had an afro, so it was extra intense that when you just get yanked back and you're like, what just happened? Why would you grab me like this?
I don't know. I think I want to punch somebody in the face. There's a thing of saying, can I touch your hair?
Mm-hmm.
And there's another thing that's just diving in there.
Well, I think they think they're never going to get the opportunity again.
But what happens when they see the next Black person?
Well, then now they've already had that opportunity, so they don't feel like they need to touch their hair anymore, maybe. I don't know. I'm typically what feels like the first Black person they see, or the second one that they don't have to ask questions about.
Did you think that when you were in Tokyo area, it was more aggressive than when you went to Osaka, because there's a lot of military members down there? U.S. military members?
Oh, you know what? I don't really remember feeling any type of way in Osaka other than the food is good. That's the main thing I remember about it. But I don't remember seeing a lot of foreigners. So here's the thing. There's a lot of military, but in a lot of those spaces, it translates to a lot of white people, not necessarily Black people. And so there's a certain level of comfort there because that's what they see on TV and in movies. That's normal. But a Black person is still unique to them.
I think when I remember Tracy was in Thailand. She was living there for about 8 months. And her hardest thing was finding hair products. Mm-hmm. So did you find that when you were in Japan you had a hard time? Because she's just my hair is dry. I can't get anything.
My goodness. I had hair products shipped in.
Okay, what is that?
Mom was sending me boxes of stuff because I wasn't able to find anything I needed. So I was wearing my hair fully natural then, and mind you, this was in 2011, kind of close to the time that natural hair was becoming a big trend. So that was the first time I had really even worked with it, so I didn't even know what I was doing. So I'm I need the right products. I can't go out and just get any conditioner. And even then, you're getting conditioner for a very different hair type.
Right.
And with that, it wasn't about color. Then it's about, texture.
Right.
So you're trying to find, coarse hair conditioner that's deeply moisturizing in a different language, no less. So you're, looking up, what's oil translated into Japanese so I can try and find it on one of these bottles.
Right, because it's in, characters.
No, it was... Eventually, I did start buying a few hair things just to see what they had and what worked. And not a lot would be the answer.
Right. I remember Tracy told me she was on the train in Thailand and she saw this mixed kid. Mm-hmm. The mother was Thai and the father had to have been Black. She's just this baby's hair just tragic. And she just really wished she could do something.
Well, how couldn't it? That entire region is a bunch of cultures where their hair is smooth and straight and silky, naturally, without doing anything else to it. So can you imagine coming from that your entire life? You've never had a problem getting a fine-tooth comb through your hair, right, and then having your child break a brush when you try and yank it through?
So if traveling while Black is a thing, what would be the hardest things I don't know. Would there be a hard region? What do you think the hardest region? You said Asia. So then,
it's not even the most difficult. It's just the most noticeable. I don't know if there's been any place where I felt it's very difficult to be black. I've definitely felt outside in a few places, but I've felt just as outside in Europe as I have, like, being in Switzerland. So I always bring, like, treats for flight attendants when I fly. Well, I got on the plane, gave them, like, their candy, and no one asked me, like, oh, where are you sitting? Because sometimes they'll be like, where are you sitting, so they can identify you to other flight attendants. No one asked this. I sat down, and yet somehow every flight attendant was able to come up to me and say, thanks for the candy. And I thought, man, how did they know that without, like, my seat number? Looked around the plane, I was like, I'm the only black person on here. That's an easy tell for them. And it's nothing, it's not a bad thing. It just happened to be that I looked around and thought, I'm the only black person here. And that's always kind of a weird moment when you realize you're like, there's no one else that looks like me. And I don't think anything's going to go wrong in that situation, but there's some comfort in not being just one.
So do you think have you encountered discrimination?
I don't know if I've encountered it outright in other countries. So, like, one time that comes to mind was, like, Salt Lake City. I was visiting a friend there, and it was, like, 3 of us in, I think it was, like, Goodwill, and I was buying some frames. I walk up to the counter, and I get ready to buy my stuff, and like, hey, how are you? As I say to any person I'm checking out with. And the guy does not make eye contact, doesn't speak to me. And I thought, well, I could have a soft voice. Maybe I said it quietly. So I'm like, are you having a good day?
I heard your voice, it actually, like, occupies a really good space. So maybe that wasn't what it was.
Oh, maybe. Maybe it was just, like, in a low murmur. I don't know. That's not what I've traditionally heard about my voice. So I've heard it's very soothing and melodic and easy to hear. Clear to understand.
Okay, so
that wasn't the case for this guy. So I pay for my stuff, get to the front, and then my friend who walks behind me, who's white, blonde, short, and first thing says, hey, how's it going? And I just thought, what the fuck? I was like, she better not say anything back to him. She better give him silent treatment. And turncoat, she said hi. I was like, I should have just walked up and like, we don't speak to him.
Right.
I should have. But I was genuinely mad. And I walked out of there and I realized, I'm like, that's a weird situation. Because I'm certain that in his life, like Utah is a little remote as far as that, but not that remote. He's definitely interacted with other black people. Whereas when I go to other places, a lot of it, especially in Asia, is more curiosity than overt racism. They're just really taken aback, and you get those awkward moments where someone like wants to ask you a question, but they don't know how, and you're like, ugh, I'd rather you didn't, but just ask it if you're going to ask it, because it's better than you being weird toward me.
I mean, because some people will really like dive into, when they're traveling and they're black, they'll be like, they'll feel that they're discriminated against, they feel like they won't be let in, or they're treated differently. I mean, we could go through how it's hard to buy our products for us because liquid lotion as opposed to a thick shea butter lotion is a difference, and shampoos are different, conditioners are different. So you're saying that you didn't discover or you didn't encounter any kind of discrimination. Do you think that's like a naivety on your part, or do you think you just generally don't see it?
I think I think it could be just me being more aloof. So one thing I realized is that I do not acknowledge when I'm stared at. And I didn't even realize that so many people stared at me until I'm traveling with other people and I'm told how much I'm stared at. I was like, I don't want to make eye contact with them. I don't want to talk to this human being, so I wasn't going to look at them.
We're back to that. I don't like people.
Yeah, I mean, it's always there. It's just hanging out in the periphery, always. So I figure I didn't want to talk to them anyway. So even if they're looking at me, I'm not looking at them.
Okay, so you don't really feel like you don't feel a certain way about black. So we'll say, what would be the other category you feel like you fit in? Traveling while...
Well, like female.
Female.
So that one, it's not necessarily... So for me, it's not about discrimination. It's about feeling that you're not part of the standard. Mm-hmm. So when traveling as female, obviously, like, 50% of the population. So it's not that other, but you do have a sense of how it changes how you travel. Because, like, we went out with a friend. We went to, like, in Vegas, went to a bar, and someone turns around, just puts their drink around and, like, looks around. And for me, like, as a female, I'm like, what are you doing? Cover your drink. But it's a guy, so he doesn't think about it. I was like, that never occurred to you that you needed to, like, cover your drink? Otherwise, you don't know where you're going to end up tomorrow?
I mean, yeah, okay. The male-female dynamic is... I am always impressed by females that travel solo and still go out at night. I'm like, wow, you got some balls.
And so that, to me, like, I don't drink when I... No, I won't say I don't drink when I travel, but I'll go out, be around, and I have to get a feel for it before I'm, like, comfortable really being out after dark. So being in Switzerland 2 weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, the first night, like, well, it's like 8 p.m. My energy is gone. I'm going back to the hotel. I was like, okay, how safe is it here? And I thought, well, tomorrow I'm going to do, like, a late dinner. And so I'm walking around and I'm thinking, I don't know if this is a good neighborhood. And I don't know how I feel.
But Switzerland is safe.
It is, but I mean, any place can be dangerous. So I'm wandering around and I see some graffiti on the wall, and I go back to, like, when I was thinking in Colombia, they said, you know, you're in a good neighborhood when there's no graffiti. The moment you see it, then you know, it's not that, like, your life's in danger, but you wouldn't want to be there after dark. So I saw this in Switzerland and I thought, oh, how do I feel about this right now? Thought, do I want to take this 40-minute walk back to my hotel or just, like, get on a tram?
40 minutes at 8 p.m.
I was actually 9 p.m. by then.
What time is the sunset there?
Oh, like 6 p.m.?
Oh, okay.
So it had been dark, and, I mean, I was in one of those restaurants, and you know how, like, Europeans eat? I thought, okay, I don't really want an appetizer. I'm not that hungry, so I'm just going to skip to it. And the guy looked like he was affronted. Like, what do you mean you don't want an appetizer? Which, I get it. The food was phenomenal.
Why would you not want a drink? Why would you not want an appetizer? Why would you not want an entree? Why would you not want a dessert? Why would you not want an aperitif?
So then it did come to dessert, and I'm like, man, I'm full. I don't want any dessert. He's like, okay, well, I mean, you gotta want something else. You can't come in here for an hour. He didn't say that, but that's what it felt like.
Damn.
Right? So he's like, do you...
American?
I know, he's like, do you want coffee? And I was like, yeah, I guess I could take coffee, and I'll just walk back and just feel good about it. But then I thought, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and get on a tram, because I'm not sure about this. And in those moments, you feel very
So was
female.
it more, did you feel, so you felt more female than black?
So if I'm being honest, for me, I typically feel more female than black. Well, no. Outside of the country, I feel more female than black. In the U.S., I feel more black than female.
So do you think that's because outside the country you feel more American than black? Or do you feel... Because I'm trying to discover the level of discrimination that you feel you receive as traveling while any kind of other category. Because if it's any kind of outside of a white male, you're going to feel a certain way in most countries. Well, you're going to receive a particular treatment. But even if you're, like, naive to certain treatments, do you feel that traveling, do you get discriminated against as traveling as an American?
I would actually say no. Things usually turn around in my favor. So, like, say, in Japan, they're very fond of Americans there. So, you said... I mean, we're a pretty big part of their culture, like their modern culture, and maybe you're right, not in such a positive way, but I think we turned that relationship around. We're one of their key allies, they're one of our key allies, and so there, it's fine. Now, in those instances, you might find, like, being black is interesting, because you'll be sitting on a train, and it's crowded, and people don't sit on to the left, like, to the left or right of you, because they're like, foreigner, black person, that's okay, we'll just leave them alone, which... That's one of those instances where I'm like, I don't think I'm mad about this. I'm going to take this space. Because normally you're like, and then suddenly you're like, oh, look at that. I get all this space to myself. Go ahead and stay away from me.
Plague.
Yeah. But in other countries, like, say you're on a tour in, like, Switzerland or something, you're going to find that you get a lot more personal care because of American culture. Tipping.
This is true. Because remember when we went to Cuba, Zara Lise was like, she saw our names and she saw we were American. She was like, oh, this could be really bad. Because of, she was saying how, oh, you don't remember? No. So she was just like, when she saw that we were American, she was like, oh my God, this could be really bad. Because she's like, we require so much as Americans. Yeah. She's like, you guys need to be baby. Do you have a standard that you like to adhere to? And I was really happy that when we actually did get there, the people that did complain were
Australian.
Were they Australian? She was Australian. She was like, why isn't the water pressure? I can't wash my hair. She was like, I thought it would be you guys, but it's her. I was like, thank you.
Love that she flat out told us that, though.
She was serious about it. Yeah.
But it was... So, a lot of places I go when I go on tours, I feel like they spend more time catering to me. And maybe it's because there's the thought that you have to cater to the Americans more. I just assumed it's because they knew that Americans were more likely to tip. So I went on a chocolate tasting tour in Switzerland, and it was wonderful. Chocolate was so good. And we happened to be there with a family where the husband was from France and the wife was from Singapore. Mm-hmm. And they had another friend with them that happened to be from Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And the woman leading the tour and my tour guide, she was really good about stopping, chatting with me, and maybe... And so initially I thought, oh, is it because I'm by myself and they're together and so she feels like she needs to talk to me? And then we get to the end of the tour and she's saying goodbye to everyone, doing like handshakes, stopped, gave me a hug. And I realized that the other family, they're like, well, the tour's done. I guess we're about to walk away. And I was like, okay, real quick, let me just give you some money. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. Like she had... I'm not going to say she had been, like, nefariously planning it, but, like, she knew that that was the expectation because that's what people from the U.S. do when they travel in the world, is that literally they throw money in cultures where tipping is not a thing, which I don't necessarily love, but also I don't want to not tip and feed into something bad. I know, we know you're not tipping.
I hate tipping. I think tipping is the worst thing ever. One, it's your job. 2, take some pride in your job. And 3, if you don't like the job, figure out how to move away from your job. I hate tipping. I absolutely hate tipping. I hate coming to the States and having a tip.
Well, so in all fairness, if we paid a livable wage to people that are doing those jobs, in Japan, I loved not tipping. I loved that you're not factoring in additional expenses on your food. You're literally looking at the price and that's calculated and that's what you have. Whereas here, you're calculating the price and then you're thinking plus 20%. And
ridiculous. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to give you 10. And that's because I feel like I have to tip.
Well, so when I go to like places like that where I know, okay, they're making enough to make ends meet. They're making a livable wage for the job that they're doing.
So you just left Switzerland, one of the highest paying
wait staff is apparently not paid that well there according to what I read, unless that was just something to get me to tip.
Imagine if you had just asked them, hey, how much do you make?
That would be real awkward.
Would
you do that? If someone asked me how much I made, I'd be like, is it any of your business?
That's American. That's very American of you.
Is it?
They pay 50% taxes so that they're fine. Switzerland is one of the best countries to live in. It makes top 10 every year. Literally.
I mean, I believe it, but I'll have to double check. So there, I didn't tip 20%. That's like a U.S. based thing. Mm-hmm. There, I was tipping like either rounding up in smaller places or doing like maybe 10%. Because that's what I read is standard.
Okay. So.
Specifically in nice restaurants, just FYI.
Specifically.
Yeah.
So we've done traveling while black, traveling while woman, which you feel supersedes everything else?
Well, I think I feel it more as far as, like, I don't want to say the dangers of it and make it sound like I'm generally just walking around afraid as a woman. But I do think, obviously, there's more inherent danger to being female than to being male. And I think I feel that when traveling. So, like Kuwait. That was an interesting experience. Because for me, I was like, okay, bring things that are a little bit longer, bring things that are a bit more conservative. And I got there and I still realized, I'm like, man, everything I have is either... Like, I'm wearing pants under something I'd normally wear as a dress, but suddenly I'm like, is this dress too short? Or is this shirt a little tight? I didn't think it was tight, but there you feel it.
Right.
And there, I didn't necessarily ever feel black, but I definitely felt female.
I live there, so
yeah.
I want to say that you weren't there long enough, because I definitely get the black thing, but in the sense of they have to figure out that I'm American before it actually, before they like tone it down. If I wasn't American, then they try to treat me like shit. If I was a woman, they try to treat me like shit because I'm not with the man. I'm with the man, I'm valuable at that point because somebody loves me shit.
When I was in China, I was on a personal tour with a personal tour guide and a private driver the entire time.
Okay.
So we showed up, and you already know that there's some money associated with this, so no one's going to treat me badly, because then you hear me speak and you're like, oh, it sounds like you have money, and it also sounds like you're American, which means I think I'm going to be tipped, so I'm going to be nice to you. I think that changed it there. Now, that was one of those places that was weirder, because I had I was in the Forbidden City, and someone walks up to me, and they're like, picture. And that's all they said, like, picture? And I was like, oh, do you need someone to take your picture? And so I reached my hand out, like, yeah, it's fine, give me your phone, I'll take your picture of this couple. And then suddenly, like, the guy just slings his arm around me, and the woman steps back, and they take a photo with me. And I was like, what is happening? I'm pretty sure I wasn't smiling, because I was a little bit confused, like, what are you doing? And then it occurred to me, I was like, again, it's like being on the flight, looking around like, yep, I am the only black person. And then you're like, bolo, out for black people, be on the lookout just to see if there's anybody else that looks like me. And there wasn't. In like a week of being there. And this isn't like some small city, you're in Beijing, you're walking on the Great Wall. These are things that you feel like people would have gone to see, but apparently not enough black people.
I mean, I see plenty of pictures of it, but...
Well, now, but that was in, 2000...
I mean, I think people were going then. So, okay, well then, that's odd. I think that's really odd. I wasn't expecting you not to say I've been discriminated against. I have not really encountered it, but...
I probably just look past it if it happens. And that, it has to be it, because I'm sure it's happened. And maybe if I go to, somewhere maybe India, where the colorism is really, really prevalent, then maybe I'd experience it. But in China, I had a good experience of being around money. However, here's one thing I do think. I think I really purvey an outwardly American look. So when you read those articles of what are Americans like when they're traveling? One of the things is they're always smiling. And much as I try, I can't stop it. If someone makes eye contact with me, I'm like, hi, how's it going? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I don't know why I'm smiling at them, but suddenly I feel like I have to. And which means obviously they're hearing my accent, they're hearing me speak, and they're seeing something that's not necessarily associated with other cultures.
So you feel non-confrontational.
And maybe that's what it is. Because even in Kuwait, so the one day you had to go to work, and I'm sitting down in the cafe by your then apartment. And I'm just sitting down there, having breakfast, figuring out how I'm going to do my day. I'm thinking about taking a taxi over to the cultural center. And this woman sits across from me, and she's just, there, and she kind of looks at me for a second, and I smile, say, hi, how's it going? Again, why? I don't necessarily care how it's going, but I figure I'll speak to you because you've looked at me now. And I feel like I have to. And then she's like, oh, are you here for long? No, just a week. And then we're talking, and then, oh, well, what are you doing? What are you seeing while you're here? Well, I want to go to the cultural center today. How are you getting there? Oh, I'm just going to take a taxi. A taxi? And then suddenly you're like, oh, that's probably not a good idea as a female. So then I'm feeling very female, but definitely not black. And finally, she's like, you know what? I'll drive you. And I thought, did it start because I smiled? Something about to happen. I thought, you know what? That's fine. Try it out. I'm going to get into this car with this stranger.
Sounds like a plan. Well, on that note, we're going to take a break. Okay, so.
I've been told to be more controversial, so I'm going to try this.
It's not controversial. It's real, but okay.
Well, no, I am being real. I can't change my stance on that because literally I don't usually actually notice any discrimination. Maybe it's there and I just don't know it.
I don't even know where to go. Maybe it's because you're lighter complexion. I mean, we're sisters,
like
so
we're
I'm not
the same
sure.
complexion.
I don't understand why I'm experiencing stuff that you're not.
I mean, so
does that mean that you're actually okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't encounter any kind of negativity from a country aside from bugs accosting you
mm-hmm.
and maybe like some weird, I didn't control my planning, does that mean that you actually experience the culture?
Well, I mean, no, because I'm still not the culture. So, like, if I go somewhere, I'm still other. I don't think other necessarily 100% always is going to equate to being discriminated against. Now, do I get slower service? For sure. So, to give you an example, on this trip with Sharon when we went to Munich, Salzburg, and Prague, mm-hmm. every restaurant we went to, we noticed our service was slower. And I wasn't even worrying about it. Sharon finally noticed it. She's like, hey, I realized for the last 2 countries, I haven't seen any black people. And she said it more like, I haven't seen anyone who looks like you. And I was like, yeah, you won't. Wow. And that's why you're going to get people that are like really looking at my hair. Because you get like weird questions, especially when English isn't the first language. Like they're just like, is that your nature hair? And it's like, no, it isn't. Okay. And that's what it's like. And I'm like, okay, that's all you wanted to know, though. And then you'll have other people that are like, really, hair? And I'm kind of caught up on the English of it all that I can't even really get into, like, why they have to care whether it's my hair or not.
Right.
So things like that, you feel it. And then you go to restaurants and you kind of get slower service. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is the one time where apparently being an American doesn't matter. But then I also don't know if it's just the culture of slow service. Because, like, we went to this one place for breakfast and we had a tour that we needed to get to in, like, an hour. And I should have known in Europe you really can't, like, get a full meal in an hour.
Not if it's not coffee and a croissant.
Well, that's really all it was. With, like, it was 4 different kinds of bread as part of their breakfast. And I was like, oh, my goodness. I don't need a baguette, a croissant, and toast mm-hmm. with 2 eggs, and that's it. And so we're doing that, and the person just disappears on us, and who knows whether it's because I'm black or they just like to disappear for fun. Because there's no one else in the restaurant to even judge this against. And finally he pops back up, and I say, hey, can we get our check? Because we're still eating. And I just mentioned we have a tour coming up, and we just want to make sure we're not late. And he tells me, eat your food first. There will be time for the check, and walks away. But to me, I don't know if that's about race or if it's about how they behave there. Because someone specifically told us about what they called Bavarian hospitality. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way that they are. It's a bit more brusque than what I am used to. So then I thought, well, I mean, who knows? And I'm just going to attribute it to the entire culture being a bit more rude than this one person discriminating against me. Uh-huh. And I don't know if that's the better way to go, to assume that literally every person from this country just has a bit of rudeness in them, or this one person is an asshole.
All right. Well, let's see. What else do we have? I think I'm actually left speechless. I'm not sure where else to go with this because I just generally experience so much discrimination. So what positive, I mean, really everything you said has been positive. So.
No, so traveling while other, it's not that it's a negative. It's just that you notice there is a gap in the world where people who look like you are not filling in some of these places.
So where have you been that you feel completely comfortable and 100% whole in every aspect of traveling while other in that particular place, including America, if that is even a thing?
I don't think, California. I feel very at home in California, but I've also lived there. So last week went to Chicago, and I felt like I got stared at as much in Chicago as I did in other places. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure out if it's because I did like a full face every day and people were like, who the fuck walks around like that? Because I was wearing a full-on coat in October when everyone else is apparently out here in t-shirts and 50-degree weather. Or, I don't know. I couldn't even think of a third reason why they'd be staring at me, but it actually did hit me. Because finally I'm like, why are this many people looking at me like this? I am in the States. There are black people in this city. Stop looking at me.
This is true.
So then that's when I was confused. That's when I finally noticed being looked at. Because in other places, you're like, I get it. They maybe have never seen a black person up close. Or maybe I don't know. It's like being in a zoo. And that's what it feels like. So for me, it's not necessarily about like being discriminated against. Sometimes it just feels kind of a little bit like being in a zoo. Like, oh gosh, I wish people would just like stop staring like there's like I'm gonna do something.
So in your 30 by 30 list, aside from California, because that's America, is there another country you just felt like completely connected to, comfortable with, 100% okay with, as a black woman, plus size, American, non-amphibian?
Non-amphibian. Like, probably not. So, like, plus size brings its own, like, bag of issues. So, say you need to buy something while you're there. In a lot of places, basically all of Asia, that's struggle city. Oh my goodness, you want to try finding a bra in Japan?
Yeah, I mean, I have some sweats that were made in China, and I wear a 2XL, so there's that.
Yeah, so things like that, you're not going to feel comfortable because there's nothing for you. I'm not going to say there's a little bit for you. There's nothing for you because you don't fit in that aspect. So you're not going to feel comfortable there. And even in, like, somewhere, say, Vietnam, they actually do have a lot of black people. What I found is that there was a lot of confusion. For a while, I was walking around and people were speaking to me in French. And I thought, what is going on here? Why do people keep on speaking to me in French? And then someone was like, oh, because there's a lot of French Africans here. And I had my hair in braids, and I was like, oh, I guess I look French African. In Vietnam. They were a French colony for a while. So the French have a pretty big presence. So
From
French
where,
Africans.
Senegal?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I never asked anyone. So that's my thing is that, like I said, I stay out of people's business, and I'd like them to stay out of mine. When I'm traveling, no, there is nothing I hate more than when people start asking you questions while you're traveling. It's like, you don't know me. Don't try to get to know me. We're not going to be friends. What do you think this is? I'm here to take in the sights, not you.
Damn.
It's just how I feel when I'm traveling. So when people start asking questions, I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and... It's like the whole SpongeBob. I'm going to head out. That's how I feel.
Non-amphibian.
But,
okay.
But generally feeling safe. I don't feel like in danger when I'm traveling. And so one of my coworkers was going on kind of her first international trip. And she was talking to me like, oh, is it safe? Is it okay? And to give you some context, she's black. She's a little bit older than me and about the same size. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you this. When you're going, you're going to be fine. Let me tell you why. 1, you're not in your 20s. You're not in the marketable age to be a sex slave. 2, you're black. Even if you were in a marketable age, there's not an audience for you. No one's trying to buy you.
Right.
3, you're a bit heavier, and I understand that because I'm there myself, so people aren't going to pick you up and carry you away. You're all good to go. You're fine. You don't have to worry about that. You have to worry about people, like, treating you like you're in a zoo more than, like, people are going to try to harm you. That's not
so do you think that makes you, like, then you can let your guard down and you can actually explore because you feel that there's no market for your being trafficked, which is actually a very dangerous part of being a woman.
I wouldn't say it lets you let your guard down because
It's a privilege in itself, though.
No, it is.
It is, actually. While traveling, you can't experience it because you're not worried that somebody's going to snatch you.
So I'm not worried that someone's going to snatch me, but I always think, and this is even in the U.S., being a woman, to me, has more pitfalls in general, like less pay and fewer options to, like, rise above your role, things like that. But being black, the dangers are far more deadly. So it's a matter of, are you taking the seriousness versus the frequency? And so to me, like, when I'm traveling, you're taking away, like, some of the sexual aspect, but because Black women are seen as so tough, then you have a whole different aspect of, like, I might not get sold into the sex trade, but I might get beat to death over, like, someone trying to take my bag.
Right.
Because they think I'm going to, like, put up a serious fight. Like, I'm not just going to, like, here you go.
Right.
So that, to me, is its own other risk. And it's not to say it's any better. It's just, they're all different risks.
I guess. It's true. So, what positive other category would you fit into when traveling?
I'd like to believe American would be the positive other. But
that's true. In some countries.
Well, I think in most places you go, it's going to bring with you a lot of benefits, I'd like to believe.
Do you think that depends on the president, or do you think that changes?
I don't know if that changes. Because even traveling now, like, people, that's the first thing a lot of people will kind of mention to you. When I was traveling during President Obama's terms, you're like, oh, you're from America. Oh, Obama. You're like, yeah, that's the association of it. And now it's like, oh, Trump. You're like, that is also the association of it. And I'm not going to say any more because I don't know where you stand on these issues. So that's when, again, I'm like, well, I'm going to go ahead and call politics part of my business that I keep to myself, and you keep it to yourself. Because unless someone's like, oh, Obama is great, I'm like, yeah, then that's fine. Because then I know I'm agreeing with them. I know I'm not putting myself in any possible danger. Because you never know when you're going to find that one person that's like, yeah, we don't like him. And you're like, oh, okay.
Okay. So, well.
Yeah, when people say something like that, just fall silent. Like, yeah.
Why do you fall silent on a lot of things? Like, where are you staying? I'm
Who,
like, you have to
who tells someone that when they ask where you're staying?
A normal conversation while you're traveling is to converse about where you're staying.
Is that really?
Where you're staying, what you're doing, where you're from. I mean, sans like, I came in on American Airlines Flight 763 and I depart 12 November 2019 on American Airlines 764 seat 33E.
I did not get the memo on that because when people ask me, I get real wary. That's when the conversation ends. Like, where are you staying? What are you, a cop? What are you trying to ask me?
I think they're just trying to connect with you.
Yeah, but that's a weird connection question. Like, a connection is, are you reading anything right now? That lets you know about my personality. Where are you staying? Sounds like you're trying to track me down.
Maybe you're staying at this. So what if you did... Okay, so what if you told them and then you ran into them at your hotel? Would you feel like, oh my God, cagey?
Yeah, I would. If I actually told them and they showed up. If, like, I didn't tell them, or if I lied to them and they still showed up, I'd be like, did you follow me? Honestly, I would avoid someone. If I thought is that same person? Duck down.
I wonder if I was in Barcelona one time with my boyfriend at the time. And we were on a Gaudi tour. We did an all-day Barcelona tour and ended in Gaudi. And so another couple was there, and we asked, they were like, oh, well, where are you staying? Oh, no, I said, where are you staying? They're like, oh, we're staying at the W on Barceloneta. I was like, oh, so are we. They're like, oh. I was like, isn't it beautiful? They said, yeah. So we go through the tour, we get downstairs, and I had torn my meniscus, so I just was done with the day, and I just needed to get back to the hotel. We get downstairs. We're all standing outside. And like, oh, let's split a cab because we're all going back to the hotel. They were like,
They were lying. You know they weren't staying there.
Of course they're lying. Of course.
But that's the thing. If someone...
But were they, or did they feel that we were trying to rob them because we were Black?
Oh, because you asked first. I feel like they were lying. I don't think they were staying there. I think they just tried to pick a nice hotel because they wanted to sound better about themselves, or they wanted to feel better about themselves.
And see, this is the experience that I have while traveling while Black.
So for me, if someone asks me where I'm staying, I'm going to go with the lower rent hotel. If I'm staying somewhere nice, I would almost never want to tell them that because now they feel like I've got something to take.
But seeing that you 50-50.
Yeah. Where are you staying?
Half in the hotel, half in my suitcase. With
I'm over at the Motel 6. That's
like, so am I. You want to split this hat? No.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to walk. I don't have money for a cab.
So what tips, because we'll wrap this up and say, final thoughts on what would you suggest or what would you tell somebody that is a newer traveler, or they could be an older traveler, while they're traveling while other, would be that Black, American, female, plus size, LGBTQ, what advice would you give them when they're journeying out into regions and areas and countries that are not norm or abnormal to them, new to them, with nobody there to guide them?
I mean, my personal philosophy would be mind your business. And most people will mind theirs.
Yeah.
Second would be bring your hair products with you because they're not going to have them there. I've tried to buy them. And think about how hard it is to find hair products that fit you in your home. And then take a language difference and try and find it there. It's too much. Third would be clothing. Bring anything you're going to need because you might not find your size there. Sure. And like, just don't expect that they're going to have it. If it's not, like, straight up deodorant and lotion, and even lotion, to your point, wandering around, like, Japan in the summer, I was, like, wearing all my thick creams, and they're just sliding off my body because of the heat and the humidity. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy one of their little lighter, like, spray lotions, or, like, but it's not actually oil. I put it on, and somehow I was still, like, slick and sweaty, but also ashy. And I thought, well, this is really fun. How did I manage to, like, hit all of the bad stuff and yet no moisture?
And a lot of their lotions have whitening, bleaching cream.
Yeah.
They're very big on having pale skin.
So bring your own stuff. And, I mean, also just smile at people. That usually helps put them at ease. Which I know it shouldn't be our job to put other people at ease, but it does make your life easier.
Okay. Well, thank you. That is all we have. Thank you for listening to the Travel Podcast. Hope you enjoyed the episode.